Thank y'all for letting me talk and tell Hunter's story. Um, I'm Shannon McDaniel. I live in Alabama, in Cottondale, Alabama, actually. And from the time that my son was little, he said that he's probably 6 years old when he told me that he was going to be a Marine one day. And I thought, whatever, you're not doing that. You're going to college. Well, surprise, surprise, when he graduated high school, the very next week he went to talk to a recruiter, and he was so excited. And if I had the picture right here, I would show you that big smile on his face when he left from for the Marine Corps that day for Paris Island. He was so happy. And I have text messages from him. I love you. I love this country. I'm so proud of what I'm doing. And in 2021, he was deployed to Afghanistan during the withdrawal at the airport there. He was not very far from the gate when the suicide bomb went off. And in he had a lot of lost some friends, and they went through a lot of hard times during that deployment, and especially after that deployment too. And in 2022, Hunter transitioned out of the Marine Corps, and he was so excited to come back home to Tuscaloosa and start school at the University of Alabama here. And I really didn't know what the transition was like, but I knew that he was happy to be coming home and starting school and be back reunited with friends and make new friends. I knew that he had some PTSD from the deployment, and he was going to the VA to get help. And I just encouraged him. I thought that's what he was supposed to do. Well, he came home end of July 2022. He started initiated care at the VA in August of 2022 here in Tuscaloosa. And first of all, he had a positive TBI screen, and they never did anything with it. I think they had like a few questions. They had like a few days that they were supposed to put in for an evaluation for that. They never did that. A few weeks later, they scheduled him with a mental health nurse practitioner who prescribed mirtazapine and hydroxyzine, and no follow-up. She prescribed him 2 months of medication with a refill of 2 more months of medication. Follow-up was 4 months later. He was dead by then. He took his life November of 2022. She also didn't do the correct screening, the suicide risk assessment that the VA, the VA, their own protocols. A counselor saw him in November, 5 days before he passed away. He did admit to having suicidal thoughts. She did the brief suicide risk assessment as well. She didn't notify the prescriber the medication. I had no idea that there was, any kind of warning for the medication. I just thought that, a trusted person at the VA who was paid to take care of him, I just trusted them. And not that I met them or anything like that, but I just trusted the care that he was receiving and really didn't think anything by it. Just, thought that he was doing the right thing. And, all this kind of came to light when I heard that I knew that I was told that someone dropped the ball. Hunter was a student at the University of Alabama, and he was doing a work study in the VA health clinic there. And apparently they had some kind of meeting with VA people after Hunter's death to maybe like figure out, different things or whatever. I wasn't invited to the meeting. No one spoke to me about it. But afterwards, a couple weeks later, someone told me that they heard someone drop the ball, which kind of made me think, okay, well, what happened? I need to know. I have to know all the details. So I requested medical records, which took several months for me to get those. And when I finally got them, I I just started looking online. What do I do? Who do I talk to? Someone needs to investigate. And I found OIG and went in and requested that they, look into it. Again, I'm not even thinking about the medication. I'm just thinking, somebody dropped the ball. Well, that was in 2023, about 5 or 6 months after Hunter passed away. And September of this year, I found out, well, they called me, OIG called and said they published their report. And they said, there's going to be a lot of things you read in this report that you didn't know about. So, make sure that you've got someone with you when you're reading this. And, I couldn't imagine like what could be so bad. Well, I pulled this thing up and started reading it, and it was like failure to inform, the patient about the box warning, and failure to schedule TBI consult. And, it's just everything is like failure, failure, failure. Didn't do this, didn't do, and it was terrible. It was crushing. But I'm here to share Hunter's story, because I hope that by sharing and maybe we can all together make some changes. We've got to do something. We've got to do something to make some changes. It's not fair for our veterans to be treated this way.
I feel bad talking about him and not sharing his photo. So that's our son. He was our second child of 4, second son of 3. He grew up, because Shannon, the parallels in our stories are uncanny. Connor grew up wanting to be an Army man. That's just, he would dress up like Army man for Halloween. He would draw tanks and planes and played with Army men, just everything a kid would do. But he just really seemed to have a predisposition to wanting to serve his country. He loved old movies like The Longest Day, for instance. He became a certified welder. He became an Eagle Scout. He was a very good photographer. Something of an amateur gunsmith as well. He built a number of weapons, rifles for himself. He joined the Army in 2019. He attended RASP, the Ranger Acceptance and Selection Program. He was ultimately assigned to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was a 25 Charlie. It was a radio operator maintainer. And in 2020, on Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving, he was in a very bad car accident. And he rolled his Jeep at 65 miles an hour. The body and the frame separated. He was in and out of consciousness for over an hour. He was life flighted to Plano, Texas from Stringville, Oklahoma, which is on the far eastern edge of Oklahoma. And they held him. They did, CAT scans, etc., X-rays. They found a cracked vertebrae, but other than a couple of abrasions, he seemed fine. His first sergeant drove down from Fort Sill, picked him up, took him back, and the Army did nothing to help him for his TBI, which is really frustrating. We found this out when we got his medical records. He was sent to off-base counseling. The counselor said all these symptoms are TBI related. Treat him for a TBI, and they didn't. About a year and a half after the accident, he was able to get a sleep study done. They found out he had sleep apnea, which was caused by the car accident. He had headaches, vision issues, some anxiety, but he was never suicidal, never. He was a happy guy. He was smart. He was well-liked. He ended up deploying to Qatar for just the last 6 months of his service. It was something he was trying to do for a long time, 2 years plus. He was kind of stuck at Fort Sill. And all of his Army friends said, Connor was the one guy that never gave up. He tried to get into the White House Communication Corps. He tried to get into Space Force. He tried to get into Rangers. He tried to get into Special Forces. He tried to go to Honduras. He just got turned down at every at every corner. He finally was able to change units and go to Qatar. And he was discharged in January of 2023 and visited the VA on March 30th, 2023 for an eye exam and for complaint of some back pain and a CPAP tune-up. His CPAP just wasn't working quite right. They ended up screening him. They gave him the PHQ test. He scored a 17, which is not really very high at all, I don't think. It was a moderate depression. And this nurse practitioner put him on bupropion, which is Wellbutrin, an antidepressant. He got the prescription on April 5th. He took 9 pills and killed himself on April 13th. And it was out of the blue, completely out of the blue. And we don't have all the details. I have asked for an OIG report, something I learned from Shannon. And we don't have that report yet, but we know for a fact they never called him for a follow-up. They put him on psychotropic medication and just let him be. He, I was going to say, they didn't do any sort of a suicide screening. They didn't do any sort of a lethal means screening. He had 6 rifles in his apartment. He had a roommate that was an Army friend from Fort Sill. They were making plans. He had plans for that weekend. He bought something off of Craigslist. He was meeting somebody on that Saturday. He died on a Thursday. He was meeting somebody Saturday. He had jujitsu lessons on Monday. He had just signed up for summer semester. He just paid off his 2014 Toyota Tacoma. He had no debt. He had money in the bank. He was going to school, getting A's. He was applying for a job the day he died. He had everything going for him. And other than some behavioral changes the last 3 days of his life, that his roommate was unaware that he was on any sort of medication. And we didn't know that he was on any sort of medication. He just did some things that were very uncharacteristic, and suicide was the last very uncharacteristic thing that he did. And that was in 2023. So we've been struggling for a long time to find a way to battle for him, because his right to defend himself, to fight for himself, was stolen from him. You know, we're losing the best this country has, the best of us. These young patriotic vets that serve their country, that are intelligent and driven and motivated and, smart. A lot of them are very, very smart. Connor was on his way to become something greater than any of us could ever expect from a child. I think he was either going to be, a captain of industry of some sort, or he could have been a state representative or the president. We don't know, of course, because that was cut short. And it's occurred to me, the day he took his life was the worst day of his life. And he was effectively tortured to death by a drug. And this thing, it was totally avoidable. It's the same situation with Hunter. How bad must it be for someone to want to take their own life? And I am so angry at the VA. I'm so angry at GlaxoSmithKline for this drug.
But another thing they didn't do with Hunter was lethal means safety counseling at either of those 2 appointments. That's something else they did not do. But they did know that he did admit to having weapons and keeping his guns and his ammunition in 2 separate places. So I wanted to say that. He also built guns, Brian and Kimberly. It's another way that they're alike. And he was also the second oldest of our 4 kids. And that's him right there. But yeah, I wanted to find a way to help the veterans in our local community, but also to help the families. And I just felt like communities and families and friends and everyone needs to come together, because people are hurting. We don't even know it. And so about a year ago, we started the Hunter Whitley Butterfly Initiative, and in an effort to get out there and get into our local community, I went to the Tuscaloosa VA hospital. I initiated a conversation with them. I did we did a SAVE training here with them. That's their suicide prevention training. I mean, I talked to these people, and then now I get this OIG report, and it's like they were basically trying to cover up Hunter's death. And these people that, you know, these people that I was talking to and trying to work with. And no, they did. The OIG report came out on September the 26th of 2024. And they called me, chief of staff at the Tuscaloosa VA did call me on August the 1st and said, hey, we found some mistakes in Hunter's care and we wanted to let you know. And it was out of the blue and it was really weird. But the two things he mentioned was the lack of lethal means safety plan. And he mentioned medication that caused anxiety. And he didn't tell me what medication that was, but those were the only two things that he mentioned. And then later, when I get the OIG report, I see all these things. And I'm like, I've been talking to these people all this time and trying to work with them and, help our community. And then I actually did an interview with the local news here early November. And after that interview came out, I started getting contacted by people who used to work at the Tuscaloosa VA, who were whistleblowers and had been reporting issues for years. So it's like the leader, there's a problem with the leadership there, and those people have been ignored. And if those people had not been ignored, then maybe they would have, people would have been doing their job and Hunter would have been better taken care of. I don't know. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think there's a whole lot of work to do here. A whole lot of work with medications and the VA.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Brian, Kim?
Yeah, I never knew what bupropion or Wellbutrin was, apart from maybe some faint recollections of ads back in the early 2000s, And as we have gone down this path, I discovered a lot of things that shocked me. Like, any primary care provider in the United States can prescribe these drugs. They don't have to be a psychologist. They don't have to be a psychiatrist. I mean, it used to be the big attraction to psychiatry was that they were actually doctors and they could write prescriptions, and they're even trying to get these to be over the counter, which again is just insanity, because the side effects, the outcomes of the trials, like Robert Whitaker was pointing out, these things, as we're learning them, kind of systematically showing us that, we're being refused our ability to fight this thing. We can't sue the drug company because it was a generic drug. We can't sue the VA necessarily because no lawyer will take our case. And, the Federal Tort Claims Act limits the payment that lawyers get to 25% of whatever the award is. And the state of Montana has a $250,000 cap on wrongful death lawsuits, which is just absolutely crazy. So at every turn, it seems like we're turned down from just being able to seek justice for our son, and it felt very lonely and very much like we were not going to get anywhere up until about 2.5 weeks ago, when I found Kim Witchak in a movie called First Do No Farm. And she got me in touch with Tim Jensen at Grunt Style Foundation. And I told Kim today, the clouds parted that day. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I know, just being able to be here and tell Connor's story. And, I hope someday I can do this in front of Congress and they can realize that, these aren't just anecdotes. These are human beings. These are, like I said, the best our country has to offer. Volunteers who put their lives on the line, and even though my son didn't see combat and he didn't really have PTSD, he suffered in different ways under the Army and the VA. And the outcome, it was the same. So
The Grunstyle Foundation continues fighting for those who have served. Support our mission at grunstylefoundation.org/donate. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and keep moving forward with purpose.